Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Grapplers Academy. Today we had the privilege of being joined by the Raspberry Ape himself, Dan Strauss.
Definitely. He's been up north recently commentating for the Cage Warriors event over the past few days. So if you've not checked them out, definitely go and check those out. And also make sure you check out Dan's podcast as well. Some very, very good content on there.
Talk everything from jiu-jitsu to stone lifting to grip strength, which he's all known for. Also a lot of talk on philosophy and life philosophy as well. Lots of great recommendations on books, lots of chess, and just a great listen all around.
Oh, definitely. And big focus as well on bringing the physical culture back into grappling, which we dive deep into.
Did you reckon the best one you've done is been your most enjoyable podcast?
Oh, it's hard to say, man. I've done about 85, and more than that, close to 90 episodes now, and it's hard to compare.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few of them I just, almost all of them I love.
Yeah.
A few I like more than others. Like I really enjoyed the David Horn one, but then like I did the one with the Explorer. And you did that one, the guy who was ex-Marines that were walking across the 5 biggest islands. They set themselves this goal, this Expedition 5, walk across the 5 biggest islands in the world, fully man-powered, and the crazy stories that came from that. Completely love that was one of my absolute favorite. I think it's one of the best, and it is the only one where the word jiu-jitsu was never said once. Literally not talk jiu-jitsu about it. And so many people were like, and it's sort of the closed-mindedness of it. Not that I don't love my fans. You got to see that you're recording that.
We'll control this.
No, you can leave it in. You can absolutely leave it in. I come as is. But a lot of people are quite close-minded on. I don't. Look, naturally, it's going to be a heavy jiu-jitsu podcast. In the same way, Joe Rogan has a lot of comedians on. He's a comedian. He has comedians on. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I'm going to have jiu-jitsu guys on. But I also want to have other people on that aren't jiu-jitsu guys. And I think people should give them a chance. And I had this guy on, and a few people messaged me like, I wasn't going to listen to it because it was jiu-jitsu. And I didn't. It's my favorite episode of all the ones you've ever done. It was really, really cool. So, yeah, I've been incredibly fortunate to have some awesome guests on. Some really I really enjoyed the Legato podcast. Really enjoyed the Braulio podcast. And then, some lesser known names. A guy called John Hegan, I remember, who. He's an old school jiu-jitsu guy, but doesn't really put himself out there that much. And his students got in contact with me and said, we think it would be really good. And I was like, you know what? Okay, yeah, I'll give him a go. He was awesome. Awesome, great storyteller. I had great stories. He'd been working in like a child, like a young offenders, bad offenders institute. And that guy's probably used more jiu-jitsu in reality than any other human on the planet. So like 12 years or something he's been working in this place, and he's wrestling with these kids every single day.
That's good training. That's training.
But it's so interesting to hear, like, okay, well, you use jiu-jitsu, what works? And it's like tying up, knee on stomach, like Kimura grips.
Old school jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Power, MMA jiu-jitsu.
Never umbrella.
Well, that kind of leads me to like a good question that I wanted to ask pretty much straight at the beginning anyway, which was you being a bit of a renaissance man for all things strength and jiu-jitsu and grappling and all the things that go along with that, like all the old school strongman stuff as well. Do you see yourself as that, or wanting to bring that element of it back into jiu-jitsu, or is it something that's kind of just developed over time?
It's something that I do actually. I think you've always got to ask yourself as an individual, like, what's your why? And what is your what? Like, what is your thing? Like, what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do stuff? And for me, a big part of it, primarily more than anything, I see my mission as a human being. You're saying, you're sent to Earth to achieve something. You've got to find out what that is. I think it's nice to have some sort of directional goal for me anyway. It is to increase the popularity of jiu-jitsu. The overarching thing, like, my goal is to leave this world having made an impact on the sport that I love and spread it to more people, which is why I do stuff like the podcast and why I like to do commentary and why I like to do travel and do seminars and stuff like that. And do other people's podcasts because I want to talk about jiu-jitsu, I want to spread jiu-jitsu, I want to get it into other people's ears, and kind of the more exposure you have, the bigger it's going to get. And I love the sport. But then on a smaller scale, inside of that, from a more personal level, I want to reconnect the physical culture with the grappling culture.
Yeah.
So if you look back to, because the UK especially has a really, and Europe in general, but especially the UK, has a really fantastic history in grappling. You know, when I talk about grappling, I'm not talking about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I don't like to pigeonhole different styles. Look, if you're not striking with each other and you're wrestling with each other, it's grappling.
Yeah.
It could be jiu-jitsu, it could be judo, it could be sambo, it could be, you know, freestyle, whatever it is. Just take all of the rules out, and you let each other go at each other, and you can throw each other around and wrestle on the ground and submit each other. That's grappling for me, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
More than anything else, you're like, I refer to myself as a grappler, and I've just gone into grappling through the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu route. Not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu person. I'm not held
It's kind of like a qualification in the whole grand scheme of grappling, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the UK and Europe in general has this great history in wrestling, and wrestling always had a really tight connection with physical culture, old school strong, sort of that golden era of old time strongmen, what we call them now. Back then it was just strongmen. And I think the reason why it was so disassociated was because of the filtration. Now obviously going back to that, the primary form of grappling does come from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and grappling went through a filtration process essentially through Brazil and through the Gracie family. And in doing so, they re-engineered and remarketed it as the small guy can win against the big guy. You don't have to be. So in order to do that, and let's make no mistake, it was marketing. Some of those Gracies were jacked, like Rickson Gracie was in incredible shape. Those guys did strength and conditioning. Those guys did build their bodies up. It wasn't, you can be pissed weak.
Yeah.
The whole thing, like Royce Gracie tested positive for steroids in when he was found in Japan. If jiu-jitsu wasn't about strength at all.
Did you test positive for acai, or was it?
Always. Well, you got to test positive for acai. So it was primarily a marketing thing. If Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had instead, or what we have today as the primary form of grappling, been filtered through a family of massive guys, then it probably wouldn't be as popular as it was today, because the marketing was so successful. It's unbelievable, actually. When you actually think about it, it's insane what that family has done and that first generation did. But yeah, we through that process, that marketing process especially, sucked all of the connection with any physical culture out of it. So I feel it's my job to put it back in.
Yeah.
You know?
It's sort of like the Gracie, there's like the unspoken Gracie brother in there with the who was a catch wrestler. Is it Gregor?
Yeah.
And like there's sort of stories of him showing like the double wrist lock grips and things like that to Helio and the other brothers. And that kind of doesn't kind of get spoke about as much, and sort of the catch wrestling influence upon the initial phases of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, like catch wrestling was a big influence, and judo was a bit, it should be put in judo, really.
Yeah.
Realistically, it doesn't come from jiu-jitsu, it comes from judo. So judo obviously has a massive influence. Catch wrestling has a massive influence. Traditional folk styles of wrestling have influences on there. The Americana is called the Americana because it was shown by an American guy who had a background in catch wrestling and stuff like that. I believe, was definitely a wrestling American guy. The double wrestler is called a Kimura just because Kimura, the judo guy, defeated Ellie with that technique. So there is, I think for the first little while they wanted to keep it pure, but I believe Holmes Gracie, who unfortunately passed away far too young. He was cross training. You can see pictures of him and his students competing in wrestling tournaments and stuff like that. He traveled a lot more and tried to kind of take influence from other places. And I think like that's the reality of what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu truly is an amalgamation of all of the existing grappling styles, gi and no gi, throughout the world that were prevalent at the time and still are.
There's quite a strong connection up in the north for catch wrestling and everything that comes off the back of that, which is great. Usually it's also associated with the strength sports, as you say. And do you think that strength and conditioning element is coming back into it for the average jiu-jitsu player now, if it has been lost in the past? I think people are starting to reintroduce that aspect of it back into the training and get physically conditioned. It's kind of the same in all sports, isn't it? I think people are prioritising or seeing the advantage of doing strength and conditioning to build on the technique that they should already have. Because being strong is not going to get you better at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Doing more jiu-jitsu or grappling is going to get you better at doing that, but also putting more horsepower in your car is a massive advantage.
Yeah, 100%. So the way that I basically break it down is you have your technique, your skill, and your physicality equals your performance.
Yeah.
Skill plus physicality equals performance. So if you have someone with very, very high skill and very, very low, and when I say physicality, I use that word, I don't say strength, physicality, because that could be flexibility, it could be speed, it could be cardio, it could be muscle endurance, it could be power, it could be strength, it could be any of these things. But generally just a very vague interpretation of the physical aspects that go on top of the skill, the things that you can train outside of your technical aspects. So in your physicality, you can have someone with very, very high skill, very low physicality, and the performance is going to come out very average. If you put Roger Gracie's brain inside of a 7-year-old's body, I'd beat the hell out of it, right? Okay? Depends how big the 7-year-old is, but I'll back myself 9 times out of 10. However, if you have someone who has very low skill and a very high physicality, their performance can be very similar, which is why you see a very strong ex-rugby player, power lifter, who's been training for 6 months, given a small, not older, not very physical brown belt some real trouble. So it's all about these two things. Your physicality, increasing your physicality will only take your performance up to a certain level, but also increasing your skill will only take your performance up to a certain level. By increasing both of those things is how you're going to get the highest performance.
I think a good example of the sort of lads that you mentioned, sort of like your Nicky Rod.
Yeah.
Very obviously physical player, explosive, fast, strong, but then he's sort of relatively new to the sport, and he possibly, arguably, shouldn't have done as well as he did in the last AD season.
Yeah. It's you cannot say that Nicky Rod's physicality is not a massive component to his performance, but at the same time, like we're talking about, he was not a well-rounded grappler, but still a high-level grappler. The guy, it wasn't that had he come from had his body been exactly the same physically, but hadn't been honed by many years of moving around in the way that wrestlers move, and training the way that wrestlers train, and having all that technical stuff behind it, we wouldn't be talking about him right now. We wouldn't know his name. So definitely, Nicky Rod is kind of a good example of what that very high physicality, how far that can take you with a relatively lower skill level. I don't want to say unskilled, but at the same time, you have to take into account that he comes from not a jiu-jitsu background. He's been training jiu-jitsu for a number of years, but training wrestling for a much longer period of time. And then you watch his style, and when you have such a strong, it's like taking a fantastic grappler and putting them in the MMA cage. They only need to know how to not get punched and get the fight to the ground, and they're going to be able to win. If you take a great tennis player, however, he's going to have problems pretty much anyway, as long as you don't give him a racket and a ball.
There's an element for like someone like Nicky Rod though, who's going training with the guys that he's training with, and it's almost 6 months to 12 years, 6 months to a year, packed in almost as a professional with some of the highest level athletes in the world. It's a little bit different from your average person who's been doing 12 months on the mats, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's say they're training, even if they're training 4 days a week, it's not under John Donahoe with Gordon Ryan and Nicky Ryan in the room and Gary Tonin.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get very tied up in numbers. Naturally, as human beings, we have proclivity to obsess over patterns. And you go, I've been training for 3 years, and he's been training for 2 years. I should be better than him. But what is your physicality like? How seriously are you taking it? Are you training 3 times a week? Do you not even think about jiu-jitsu outside of those 3 hours a week? Other guys training 3 times a day. You can't compare. When I started training jiu-jitsu, you don't have the ability to train. I trained 2 or 3 times a week, and there was nothing else. The gym that I was training at had 2 classes a week. So you train for a couple of years and you get X amount of classes in, and then someone trains nowadays and they train for 3 months and they've got the same number of classes in. So they're training 5 days a week, multiple times a day. So I think when you talk about how long someone's trained for, there needs to be an
asterisk.
It's been a very long weekend. 3 nights straight commentating. I've got my words pretty much gone, but you need to have some added information. You can go, how long have you been training? I've been training for 5 years. Are you training average 2 to 4 times a week? No, I'm training twice a day, 6 days a week. Okay, well, I take that into account. It's very, very different.
It's kind of like the 10 years kind of average training, and that level of training.
Exactly, absolutely.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other week, weren't we? Yeah. About the absolute psychopath blue belt who's sleeping on the mats and going into comps and then going against the guy who's training a couple of times a week and he's been training for 4 years. And it's a big disparity in skill set and desire as well. You can guarantee the guy who's doing that psychopathic training has got a lot of
There's a reason he's doing it. The reason he's doing it, he probably likes it.
If you were going to say to somebody who'd been doing jiu-jitsu a while but hadn't really taken the strength and conditioning or like physical attributes, as you say, seriously, it's a tough question to ask. Where did he start? What sort of training methodology? And what do you think they should be looking to prioritize first as a physical attribute?
Yeah, I think it is a good question. It's sort of the $1 million question, really. I think there are certain things that you can train. The number one priority when you do any training outside, any accessory training outside of your sport, the number one priority is safety. It's health. The research suggests that the one thing that you can do to decrease the amount of injuries that you get in the sport is to actually do strength training. Actually, a lot of people assume it's stretching, but the literature suggests that's not the case, and that strength training is far more beneficial for injury prevention. It is criminal to injure yourself doing the thing that you're doing to help your sport. You will, and I talk about this all the time, you will injure yourself doing your sport. Everyone will injure themselves doing their sport, and that's fine. It's not nice, but it's fine. You'll bugger your knee, you'll tear your shoulder, you'll have surgery at some point. All of these things happen. As long as it is doing your sport, that's part of the journey. But you should never, ever injure yourself lifting to get stronger for your sport or running to get stronger, to get more fit for your sport. You should never injure. So number one priority is always safety. And even if that means you need to be smart and not go too hard in some situations, you've got to reel it in sometimes when you want to, especially when people start working out and they start feeling the benefits of strength training. Both of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Jesus Christ, is to go, if people are listening to this and they haven't done any strength training, there was a film recently, it was on Netflix recently, I think it was called Power or something like that, but it was about a pill that they take and they get superpowers.
Oh yeah.
It was with Jamie Foxx.
Yeah.
And it's this sci-fi idea. Every single, and it's, the pill doesn't give you power. You have the power. Each power is unique to it. You have it inside and it brings it out, basically. Every single person in the world has it. Just the pill is a metaphor. You don't have the ability, you can't do it instantly, right? You can't fly around or anything. But like everyone has, they're inside an incredible machine. People look at their body like a car. It's not a car, it's a fucking transformer, right? But you've got to work to make that transformation. And every single person has the ability, and a lot of people have no idea. It's very abstract. Before you do it, before you see it, you go, oh, I could work out and I'd get leaner, or get, I can do 10 push-ups now, and if I tried hard, I'd be able to work up to 50 push-ups or something like that. It's different to that. It's different to being able to just do something. Your entire body changes, everything changes, and then you can feel that expression of strength and physicality come out in so many different ways, and it's intoxicating. If you listen to this, you haven't done any strength training, that's one of the nicest reasons to do it. Is you change yourself, you become a different human being. Literally change your body. We take it for granted, but it is unbelievable. But a lot of people get intoxicated with that feeling, and then they can start to be blinded by that. And in doing so, they can do things that maybe they shouldn't do. And in doing so, a lot of the time, the negative implications of doing things you shouldn't do them because you're going to get injured. So number one thing, we're now ranting too long about that, is don't get injured. I forgot that I'm answering you. This is always my problem. Someone says something, I
go
just
for it. I
rattle
think it's
on.
important that people hear it.
I rattle on for a very long time.
Jiu-jitsu in combat sports is a weird one. I think that people are afraid of getting muscle tissue. and getting stronger. Like everyone wants better cardio and more flexibility, but everyone seems afraid to want to do strength training because they're going to hulk out, and then they're going to go out of their weight bracket. And
it's just not going to happen. It's sort of the extreme version is like the women who like, I don't want to lift weights. I don't want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm like, look, nobody can look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you took all of the steroids and did all of the working out and ate all of the food and everything, you still can't look like it. You're probably not going to do 10 lunges and look like Arnie. Some people do have the ability to put on muscle much faster than others, but you're not. And this is the thing, people who, and then we'll get back to your original question, but people who don't work out, they don't realize the process. It's a process. It's a very long journey. It's a journey that you get on and you never finish. You never finish that journey. It's a continuation. It's a constant journey, like life should be. You're not going to suddenly be big and muscle bound, because in order to do that, you don't start walking a journey and find yourself at a destination that you didn't want to get to all of a sudden. You're going to see that, maybe see it really far in the distance, and it's up to you if you want to go over there. If you don't want to go there, you want to go somewhere else, that's up to you to go into that other direction. Nothing is going to happen by accident, and nothing's going to happen in these scenarios out of your control. That is in one way the advantage of it not being a pill. It's a very long, slow process. If you don't want to get muscle bound, like, it's not that easy. Getting strong is relatively easy, but hulking out is something that I think people can see someone who has made a transformation and they go, well, I wouldn't want to do that. Like, you have no idea the work that individual has put into doing that. It's not easy. But yeah, anyway, getting back to your question about sort of that $1 million question, which by the babbling on, I'm not going to get a straight answer. You're not going to get a straight answer out of me. The most important thing is absolutely the health and safety. Don't injure yourself training for your sport. Second thing would be, I think, before you start worrying about improving stuff, you need to make sure that there are any physical ailments or dysfunction in the way that you move is addressed before anything. You can't build on top of a weak foundation. And originally there was a time where I believed that foundation was foundation and strength. And then you realize that the first floor of the building is not the foundation. It must be strong to hold a big tower, but the foundation comes below that. And for me, that is being able to move in a functional way for your sport and just as a human being as well. And that's where it can be difficult to find the right, because the issue that you're going to have when you're starting out, you learn on the job, right? You learn on the job, but then how do you start? It's that whole paradox of you don't have enough experience to do this job and you need this job to get experience. It's a very, very difficult one. That's why you hire people who are coaches, or you talk to people who know what they're talking about. It's very hard to find people who actually know how to assess a body correctly for that individual as well, for that sport. If you're assessing someone who's going to be a football player and you're assessing someone who wants to be a grappler, they're going to have very different things that you want to have that person being able to do. But I think being able to move fluidly and control your body, because we assume everyone does that. If you find a young kid, very often the individuals who tend to be naturals when they're grappling tend to be people who have better understanding, proprioception, and control of their body in the first place. So that comes before anything. Can you move pain-free? Can you move fluidly? Do you have control of all of your limbs? That's the real foundation, the under the ground. Then it is building up, I believe, a foundation of strength, of basic strength, before you start getting into the more funky stuff. But always with it in mind, be safe with it, and don't injure yourself.
And also, I think like making it fun as well is important. Try and find something that you enjoy doing, because as you say, to get to the path of where you want to be, it's a 5-year journey to even get to the through the door on that path, isn't it? Really, to be Mickey Rod as an example of a really physical guy. That wasn't a 2-year transformation, no doubt. So pick something that's fun and enjoyable to do the process, because you're going to be in it for a while. Yeah,
I couldn't agree any more with that. And that's different for different people. You will never, look, the simple thing in life, consistency is key. Anything that you want that is truly worth having takes time. If you want to build a successful business, it takes time. If you want to build an incredible body, it takes time. If you want to build an incredible skill set in a certain aspect, it takes time. Nothing good comes for cheap, free, or quickly, because if it did, everyone would have it. So everything takes, consistency is the absolute most important thing. Bottom line of anything, consistency is the most important thing. But, and with that in mind, looking at a much longer term journey, longer time frame, if you don't enjoy something, the chances of you being consistent with it are very, very low. Mm-hmm. You can tell yourself that you want to learn Spanish. You can tell yourself that you want to learn to do this or learn to do that. But if you don't love it, the chance of you doing it is going to be very, very low. Which is why when you're looking to find a sport to do try them all. Yeah. Find the one that sticks out to you. You know, when people ask me the question, because even like within the, like I'll take that concept and put it into a practical application. Like someone will ask me, I'm moving to a new area. Let's say someone's moved from London and moving to Manchester, and what's a good gym to train at? I don't know. Like I can tell you 10 gyms in Manchester. You guys are lucky. You have an incredible big jiu-jitsu scene here. Yeah. There are 10 good gyms. Like here are good gyms. The maybe this guy, this one's more gi and this one's more no gi, and this one has some really good young competitors, and this one has some seasoned guys. That's all irrelevant. Unless they're at high level already, but if they're high level, they don't need me to tell them what gym to go to. It'll be a white belt usually, or someone who's never trained before. I want to train. What's the best place to train to? And I say, find every single gym in the area. So if you're saying you want to not have to travel more than 20 minutes to get there, go into Google Maps and find every single gym within a 20-minute radius. You go to every single one of them. Don't stop on the third one and go, let's say there's 10. Yeah. Don't stop on the third one and go, I really like this one. No, go to every single one. Go to every single one of them, and you will know which one you want to go to. Yeah. Because that's the one where you feel the most at home and where you enjoy it. And if you enjoy it, you're more likely to stay.
I think that's like a very good bit of advice. It's sort of very underestimated, that, because the whole like gym environment is like a culture where you're going to grow as a person, as well as an athlete. You're going to develop a social circle there, as well as the sort of skill set, and also stylistically, is that coach going to add to your game, or is it so far afield from what you normally play that you're not going to sort of grow initially?
Yeah.
So you kind of want to pick somewhere where you sort of feel at home, feel comfortable, and it's sort of the vibe there is sort of, you're like, I can see myself growing here as a person. Yep. You might have the best coach in the world, but if it's not an environment you feel comfortable, 100%. You're not going to learn.
100%. That's why it's when it comes to picking a gym, the quality of the instruction is not the most important thing. It is, does the vibe work for you? Because I know multiple fantastic gyms. We go to London now, and then multiple fantastic gyms where one person's gone to one and they absolutely love it. It's home to them, home away from home. That's where they go to get away from the stresses of home. They love it there. They feel comfortable. It's their happy place. And then someone leaves that gym and goes to another gym, and they love it there. It's so much better than the first place. There is no such thing. That's a lie. But there's no such thing as the perfect gym.
No.
There's no such, because humans are very different, and humans want different things. So one gym might be very laid back. It might be you rock up, you check hands, there's no uniform. You don't call your instructor sensei or professor. You call him dad, for example. I'm pretty laid back when I was teaching Mill Hill. And it's quite a chill vibe, and we joke around and mess around with people. And there'll be someone else who will go to a gym where they have to wear the uniform. They line up at the beginning of the class. They bow at the beginning of the class. It's professor, and they love that.
Yeah.
You can't tell anyone that one's better than the other. No. For you, the first one might be better. For you, the second one might be better. For me, I'm not digging either. I want somewhere in between. So you got to find, and that goes back, again, going off track. That's what I do. That's what I do. But yeah, you need to find something that you enjoy. And the exact same thing is true for your strength conditioning work, any of your accessory physicality building activities. You've got to find something. At the same time, you can't just find something that you're going to enjoy. You've got to find that balance between, because you might just enjoy, sitting on the sofa doing nothing. You know, you might enjoy bodybuilding. And you go, well, it's probably not going to make you great for your sport. It's maybe better than doing nothing. But see, there needs to be a balance. But a lot of people, I think, they go and they do bench, dead, and squat, and they go, I find lifting weights so boring. I'm not going to do it. And in that scenario, you go, well, hold up. There's some other stuff that you can get similar results. You don't have to do it quite so rigidly. That's similar to the strict gym and the laid back gym. Mm-hmm. Strict gym is like you're on a strict program. You come into the gym, you're going to do this every single day. And it's all going to be based around barbell work and a little bit of accessory stuff. And then you're going to go home and go do the same thing in a couple of days' time. So you've got to find that balance between finding something. You imagine you've got that diagram, that Venn diagram, where you enjoy, stuff that's functional for your sport, and then in the middle, that's exactly what you want. There'll be stuff that you will love that won't really help you, stuff that will help you that you won't love, and then you've got to find the stuff that works for both.
I guess enjoying the stuff that you don't love as well, you kind of find when you start seeing the benefits of it, you almost convince yourself that you enjoy it because you're reaping the rewards from it.
Yeah.
So like recently I've been doing a lot of isometric work.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of exercises where I'm sort of dreading it every time I go to it. But then each week I go to it, I feel stronger in the movement.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I don't mind it actually.
Yeah. So, well, you know, that's just another almost unexpected way of enjoying something. You can enjoy something because of the immediate sensation, or you can enjoy something because you enjoy the way that it makes you feel on a longer term basis. It's still enjoyment. So in that scenario, but then it's about, does the enjoyment that you feel from the change to your body or the sensation on a long-term basis, does that outweigh your dislike to doing it in the first place?
Yeah.
So if you enjoy feeling stronger more than you dislike doing the work, then you're happy.
Yeah.
But if you like feeling stronger but really cannot stand the stuff that you've got to do it, that's when you quit doing it. Yeah. So again, absolutely everything is about balance. I think so often people want a very rigid answer. Again, there's like a very natural human desire for an absolute, a figure, a number, a very precise answer to anything. It's like people ask me, what's the best exercise for grip? They want one thing. Give me that one thing. Because give me the answer, this never-ending search for a simple answer. And you go, look around you. Like, look at that tree over there. Do you understand the complexity that goes into that tree? Is related to us. If we go back far enough, we'll be connected to a single-celled organism that we are literally related to that tree over there. Do you understand the complexity of life? And you expect me to tell you a very simple answer to a very complex question like that? So, like everything in life, there's no simple answer, especially in jiu-jitsu and training. Everything, it's a balance. Yeah. There's a spectrum. For some people, it's going to be more this side. For some people, it's going to be more that side. Never expect a simple answer, because very rarely are you asking a simple question, which is why I think some people like maths, because it's like the only thing really. Maths, like the beauty of mathematics is that there are absolute answers because the information that you input into it has the same format of absolute precision. But the reality is that with most things, there's a lot of variables involved, and when you have humans involved and stuff, there's always complications. So, you know, we're training. I'm getting really super off track. But you get the idea. Yeah. Everything's about balance.
So I guess with that, because everyone sort of has that bit of advice that they got during the start of their journey that kind of carries over to sort of where they're up to today. Have you got any sort of thing that advice that you?
Do you want one answer?
Or just anything that you've sort of that resonated more with you personally.
That's everything that I've just said has led me up to not having to give a straight answer to that question. No. The reality is, that's another question that I get very often. Yeah. What's the one piece of, and it's a question that I ask people. You know, and there's actually two possible questions that you're asking me. Yeah. Which is, what's the one piece of advice that you remember that you would pass on? And then what's one piece of advice that you have?
Yeah.
So for me, if someone asks me a question, and I don't, maybe I'm just dumb like that and can't remember stuff, but someone asked me, you've done so many podcasts with these incredible people, you've learned so much stuff. Tell me some of the things that you learned. And or they ask me, I read quite a lot and I listen to audiobooks quite a lot. Tell me some stuff that you've learned from audiobooks in the last 6 months, like that. I don't feel that I don't take the information in, store it in a file and then regurgitate it.
Yeah.
I find that, and maybe some people work like that. I don't know. I can't tell you how you work, but for me personally, it doesn't work like that. I don't remember any advice that I got in a format that I can regurgitate it as, I remember when Nick Brooks told me this one thing and this changed, but no doubt he's taught me many, many things. I think for me, the information goes in, it goes into the pot.
Yeah.
And out of that pot is kind of, that pot becomes my subconscious, and that affects everything else that I do. So when people ask me for what's one piece of advice that someone gave you that changed your jiu-jitsu game, like, man, I've been training jiu-jitsu for a long time. I've had a lot of advice.
Yeah.
I can't remember any one of those things. So that's me skirting around your question.
Nice.
But I guess the actual question is there one bit of advice that I got as a begin? That was the question?
Yeah, more sort of around your sort of strength journey.
Okay. So let me think. Let me try and go into that file and see if I can find any stories.
Like what I'm sort of getting from there, it sort of seems like the people that you've surrounded yourself with have sort of filled that pot, and that's kind of created what you've got today.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I've got from that.
Yeah, and that is how I believe everyone should be.
Yeah.
Which is not a you take in, always be open-minded. You want to hoover up everything you can. And it goes to that Jet Li, the Bruce Lee quote, which is, learn and just take in and remember what's useful, and discard what you find unuseful or unnecessary. And I think that's great advice for life. And for me, when it comes to, I'm on a constant journey of changing, of evolving, of learning, and I have many different branches of which I take that information in. I have people close to me that I respect very highly as coaches, who, whenever they talk, I listen. Don't agree with everything they say, but I respect the individual, where I will always listen and discard what is useless and keep what I feel is useful. And sometimes challenge myself and go, if they're saying this and you disagree, why do you disagree? And that's a big thing that I think a lot of people don't actually do, which is, if you disagree with someone, people tend to have a bad habit of getting defensive. So when you say something, I say something, you disagree, or you say something, I disagree, and I go, we're against each other now. I think what's a lot more useful, and maybe this is something that I've learned over the years that I've been training and everything, which is, I need to ask myself, why do I disagree? And have that conversation with myself. I need to challenge don't just challenge other people's beliefs, challenge your own beliefs. Be open-minded enough to change how you feel about different subjects. I would have spoken about something 5 years ago that I now disagree with. And in 5 years' time, I will be speaking about something today that I will disagree with in 5 years' time. And I hope that's the case. I think a lot of people get into a bad habit where they create an idea and they attach that idea so personally, they connect that idea to their own ideology and their own sense of self, that the fragility of their own ego is connected to how strongly they continue to hold on to that belief, which means you can never admit that you were wrong. You can never change your opinion, because that would therefore affect who you are as an individual, and that should never happen. You should always be open-minded and be ready. That quote of, if I'm the same person today that I am in 20 years' time, I've just wasted 20 years of my life. You should always be learning, always be taking in more information. So one of the avenues that I absorb information is from individuals. We live in a fantastic time now, a shit time for some reasons, fantastic time for others. It's a really double-edged sword with the connectivity of the internet, social media and stuff like that. But you have the ability to be exposed to individuals who are fascinating individuals putting out interesting content online. And again, another avenue of information for you to challenge yourself and learn and potentially improve on that from books. For me, sort of, in terms of content from individuals that you don't know on a personal level, you have this juxtaposition and this yin yang of social media and books. And when I say books, let's go back, not books that are written recently, but old books. I like to read the old stuff as well. And you have content which is always changing, instant, fast, cutting edge. Someone thinks of something, there's someone out there who is on the cutting edge of movement, performance, physical condition or whatever, and they'll test something today and put it out tomorrow. I'm playing around with this. Wow, that's interesting. And then and then you have a book that was written 100 years ago. Then 100 years time will be the same thing. It's not updated quickly. It's written, but then you have the ability to almost look into the future with your social media, constantly changing, evolving, moving forward, and then also look into the past. And if you only look into the past, you're not going to be exposed to the modern stuff. And if you only look into the future, you can lose a lot of the wisdom and knowledge that has been around for a long time. So your social media, another very good avenue of getting information, but then also books and stuff that's written a long time ago, which everything goes around in cycles. You tend to see in history, things go in loops. Stuff that was popular a really long time ago comes back around, and then it becomes unpopular, and then comes back around. So kind of get both aspects of that there. And then, of course, one of the most important ways of learning, which is testing and experimentation and exploration through yourself. And this is something that I try and teach, not teach, I try and tell people when they ask me stuff. So recently, because this is something that I've been doing more over the last couple of years, and one of the main reasons for that is because I don't have access to my coach that I had the years beforehand. So Andrew Marshall, who's been a long-term strength and conditioning coach for me, he closed the gym. I spent a lot of time with him before. He opened the gym, and I was spending every day with him. And then he closed the gym, less time, and then he moved to Newcastle. I'm in London, really far away. And then suddenly we had this big separation. We still see each other very often, but very, very different dynamics there. And once that happened, I was forced to rely more on myself. And if you just keep on walking that same path without exploring, without testing yourself at all, then you don't get any growth from that. And it is very hard to do. So over the last couple of years, and actually really over the last 6 months over lockdown, was a great time for me because my amount that I was doing strength and conditioning really increased because I wasn't rolling. I took 3 months completely off of rolling, didn't touch a mat at all for 3 months. And in that time, usually I lift about two, maybe 3 times a week, 2.5 times a week, I'd say. And then I went from 2.5 times a week lifting to 6 days a week lifting, which means it gives you so much more time. Very low energy. I wasn't training with anyone like I usually do, so you're not going for the big lifts, but spending a lot of time practicing movements, experimenting, trying to get feedback. So I'm recovering from a cold a little bit bunged up. Get more nasal as this conversation goes on. I'm out of the blow my nose.
Everything that you were just saying though is like an awesome metaphor for jiu-jitsu, isn't it? It's like jiu-jitsu and life, the philosophy combined.
Well, I think when you've been training for jiu-jitsu, as long as I have, like, it sounds stupid, but jiu-jitsu is life. Like it becomes that. Yeah. I think if you do anything, if you play chess for 15 years and you obsess over it and it becomes your life, and you teach it and you train it and you talk about it and you do podcasts about it and you commentate about it, and it becomes your personality. Like, who are you? I'm a grappler. Who are you? I'm a chess player. Then they're going to see analogies for life in chess, and it's going to be the same for anything that you do. So going back to what I was saying there is something I've been doing more recently is sort of exploring through my own, personal exploration, and that is very difficult for a beginner to do. Very, very difficult for a beginner to do, but it is something that they should have in their mind to be aware of, because you cannot recognize something that you don't know you're looking for.
Yeah.
Sort of that obliviousness, the ignorance. So you may not be able to do it, but if you know that you should be looking out for it or thinking about it, the amount of time it will take for you to get to a stage where you are able to do it is going to be way, way faster.
So I've talked about, and we've talked about before, like with skill set, almost exactly what you're saying. You've got to have and practice that skill set so you can get it to a standard where you're not thinking about it and it's subconscious.
Yeah.
And then only at that point can you really unlock your creativity and start to see and explore with things. So like you're saying with a beginner, it's really difficult to get to that place because they simply just don't have the skill set. So you've got to put time into whatever it is that you're doing, whether that's jiu-jitsu, lifting, reading, studying, whatever. And then once you've got that skill set, it's like an awesome musician, isn't it? Nobody's, Mozart's not coming up with it thinking note by note. It's flowing out of his body. It's an expression. It's an expression of yourself that's going out through the skill set that you've got.
Oh man, watching musicians who are good, like my favorite is like watching jazz pianists. They just sit down and they just improvise and let their hands move, and these incredible sounds come out. But it's like the competency matrix, which is unconscious. The
unconscious incompetence.
Yeah, let's see if we can get this right.
Unconscious incompetence. You start off your white belt, unconscious incompetence. I was reading a book about this a while ago, and I felt like you could put that next to your belt, basically.
Yeah.
White belt, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And then you have your conscious incompetence, which is you know that you don't know, blue belt. And then you get the purple belt, and you know that you know, or like purple brown belt, you know that you know, conscious competence, and then you have unconscious competence. You don't know how much you know.
Yeah.
Because you're really high level, which is a white belt. I'm putting that into more practical terms. It's someone who's never trained jiu-jitsu before. Maybe not, or white belt's been a bit harsh, but someone who's never trained jiu-jitsu before, you could say, do a jiu-jitsu, and they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. They literally, I have no idea what's going on. And then you get someone who's done it a little bit, and they get into a position, and they know they'll get to mount, and they try and go for an arm bar, but there's some sort of problem that they have to try and troubleshoot, and they know that they can't do it. And then you get to where you're confident and you understand what's going on, and you see the problem, because that's what jiu-jitsu for me is physical problem solving. Yeah. That is absolutely, and that's what if I was to break down, when I refer to myself, what I identify as is a grappler, if I break that down even further, that even though I feel like a grappler, that can only express itself on the mat. If I take a step out from that, I'm a problem solver. I love, people come to me, oh man, I've dropped my phone down the side of this thing and I can't get it out. I'm like, okay, everyone step back, I want to do this. I want to find a way around this problem. You look like in my gym, I'm going to find a way. I don't have I have a lot of stuff, but I might not be able to do this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a pulley system. I'll do this here, and I'll tie this around here, and I'm going to use a chain to get this rock and then tie it to this, and all of that stuff. So and I've always been like that as a problem solver. So yeah, so you get to a high level where you can do that problem solving in jiu-jitsu, and you know that you know how to get past that problem, and then of course you get to your high level jiu-jitsu where you don't even have to be aware of the problem. You could be eyes closed and someone grabs you and you can just start moving. Yeah. And you can almost watch yourself, and I do it sometimes when you roll. You guys might be the same, but I will switch off my conscious decision making, switch off the problem solving, and see let's see what my body does. In the same way that a musician will let their fingers flow, I let my body flow sometimes, and I sit back and oh man, that's interesting. Why am I doing that? Oh, why am I? Oh, it's working though. Okay, let's see where this goes. He's gonna roll. I'm gonna roll there. And that's the beauty.
It's kind of like the difference between being first person mode and then going third person mode with it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think an important thing as well with that is, like we're saying white belts coming in and they can't, and it's not because they've got a skill set. Everybody in life has got creativity. Yeah. And they might be able to express that through music or painting or whatever. It's the skill set. So like a good quality of a coach is being able to find an analogy that allows them to translate their creativity and get them thinking correctly to accelerate their learning, which is hard to do. That's probably one of the harder aspects of coaching, and if you can find a good coach that does that, then awesome. But everybody's got creativity. It's just giving them the tools to unlock it.
That's it.
Yeah,
100%. I agree with that. And I think go on.
Also, I was about to say, there's a channel that I was watching a while back, and the guy was sort of saying like the difference sort of between wrestlers and jiu-jitsu players is you give a wrestler a template, whereas you tend to give jiu-jitsu players a technique. Yeah. And the wrestler will apply the template to any scenario with the jiu-jitsu, like early on anyway, will be like, this technique doesn't work. It's like, well, you've got the foundation for it, make it work. And that's sort of where the creativity will come in. So you're almost sort of giving like the way I sort of try and teach is I'll give my students the template, like let's add your flair, fit it to your body type, and fit it to the scenarios that you kind of find yourself in.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you know, that is one of the beautiful things about anything, which is when if you were to tell someone who doesn't train jiu-jitsu that it's an expression of creativity, they go, "What are you talking about?" You know, you can say that about boxing. You know, I have an incredibly rudimental understanding of the boxing game just from watching MMA and stuff like that, and watching a bit of boxing. But if you spoke to a boxer, they call it the sweet science. They call it that for a reason. It's not people who don't do it. That name comes from people who do it, because I believe jiu-jitsu is the sweet science, and you know, and someone who plays chess may believe chess is the sweet science. You know, I use the chess analogy a lot because I do play a little bit. I've started playing a little bit of chess, and I find it one of the most beautiful things in the world. And it's the same thing. You know, chess. The great boxers see creativity. The great chess players see creativity. There's a really good film. I think it's called AlphaGo, and it's about there's an AI computer learning system called they made one that played Go. You know, I think it's Chinese game. Go. It's like chess has some quadrillion different possible variations, and Go has like 1 billion times more. You know, just like obscene. It's the levels of complexity of this game are just out of this world. They're pretty much the most complex or most variables in any game that could be. And these people created an AI system. And now most AI systems play chess, for example. They did another one. So Google bought this company. It's called Alpha. And they did one for Go and they did one for chess more recently. And most of the time when you teach a computer, an AI system to play chess, when you're creating a chess engine, you give it, you put a lot of games into it. You put all of the information in, and it uses that to get more intelligent. It sees every different variation that's happened, and it builds off of that. These guys didn't do that. And this is where it gets crazy. And you start talking about AI. It's a fantastic film. I think it was on Netflix. I don't think it's on there. I'm pretty sure it's called AlphaGo. If you look for AI Go, like it's a great film to watch. I'll get back to creativity. I'm coming back. I'm back around. I go away, but I always come back.
That's impressive, actually.
I always come back. I've been doing this for a while, but I found it so fascinating. And the reason why I go off topic so much, I talk about jiu-jitsu so much, so I like to go off and come on. But this, instead of putting games into the engine, they just toyed the rules. That's all they did. They toyed the rules. This is how you play. This is how the pieces move. This is how you win. And then off you go. And it just starts playing games against itself. And because the processor plays thousands of games a second, and it just starts playing. I think like within 4 hours it could beat anyone. It could beat a normal guy. And then like it might be even less than that. Like within it could have been even within hours, it was the strongest computer system that's ever been created to play chess. And then it plays another, which previously was the highest rated chess engine called Stockfish, destroys it. Oh wow! But completely like computer learning. You just teach it the rules, and it learns how to play the game. And they did the same thing for Go. But with Go, they did not believe this was the difference. So obviously you had that big Deep Blue, which was the original chess engine that beat the Grandmaster. Okay, back in whenever it was. That was a big moment. Computers have become smarter than human chess players, and obviously after that it just goes up, so it's out of their range. And they never believed that would happen with Go because of the levels of complexity, the advanced complexity to do with the game of Go. And this whole film is about the creation of this program and how they're going to challenge Go players, and nobody believes that it's going to work. And the goal is to basically do the same thing that they did with Deep Blue back in the day, which is to play the champion, the world champion, the greatest Go player in the world at the moment. And they play each other. And there's a moment where this Go player, this Grandmaster, the best player in the world, he's visually very stoic guy. He's very taken aback, very shocked about something, very surprised. He's really rattled. Kind of asked him like, what happened? It's like, it was creative. He could not understand. Like, this is a guy who, the greatest in the world at this game, and did not believe that a computer would have the ability to create creative, not just, it wasn't technical, it was beautiful. He saw it as beautiful. And the shock in this man from seeing he's not playing like a computer, he's playing like a person, like with heart. And that blew his mind. But it goes back to what you were saying, like the creativity can express itself in so many different things. And for those big in the sport, it can be very profound. For someone who doesn't understand, and that's what a good film does, a good documentary does, it builds that narrative. So you watch it and you go, wow, the Go computer is being creative, even though it means nothing, right? You see they're just moving like pebbles around the board. But it's the same for jiu-jitsu. You can watch it and you can watch someone who is the absolute best at the sport doing what they do. Usually you don't see that stuff in competition because it's so evenly matched, but you sit on the mat, real beauty. But then people who are in the know, you watch it and you go, wow, this is unbelievable. This person, the creativity, there's so many different things. The more that you understand and respect something, the more you're able to see throughout this superficial and deep into what must have gone on in the head and the positioning and the movement and the timing and that's the beauty of it. That's why after 15 years, I love it more than ever.
Yeah.
Because you can never I can't see how you can get bored of it. Because the more you do it, the more you understand the beauty involved in it. So and then I think, of course, but you know, being open-minded, I go, that's not a jiu-jitsu thing. That's an anything thing. Yeah. That's Go or chess or tennis or, you know, boxing or whatever. All of this stuff, there's a superficial level, there's a deep understanding, and then there's a incredibly deep appreciation of the creativity involved.
When you get down the path of that as well, it's incredibly frustrating, isn't it? Because, you know, 15 years of jiu-jitsu, and then you get to this point where you start to realize and see it in everything else, and you're like, shit, I'm gonna have to dedicate 20 years to chess.
You've got to manage your expectations. I'll never be as good as a chess as I am in jiu-jitsu, but I love chess, man. And I'll watch chess matches or breakdowns of chess matches. And there's times like where I understand it I would give myself one strike blue belt maybe at chess, but I'll watch it sometimes. Man, it's beautiful, really beautiful. Yeah.
Sort of like knowing the rules to be able to break the rules, and that's sort of where I sort of see creativity going. Is sort of like with the say back to musician, they kind of have to understand the fundamentals and the foundations and kind of like the rules that can't be broken to learn.
Yeah.
And then once you hit a certain level, you can be like, well, I know if I break this rule of this chord, for like, it's going to sound this way.
Yeah.
And it's going to enhance the song to another level.
Man, music is one thing. You've got me going again. Music is one thing, which is something that I appreciate from a perspective, but have no understanding. Not chess. Jiu-jitsu, I appreciate and I have a deep understanding of. Chess, I appreciate and have a small understanding of. Music, I appreciate and have zero understanding of. But but I still like to watch people who do talk about it. I find it fascinating. Recently, I've been watching a guy. I've been watching him for a long time, but because I've been locked in a hotel room for the last week, I was watching a lot more a guy called Jacob Collier. It's like a jazz musician, but maybe one of the greatest music minds in the world. And the musical theory, none of us who don't play, and many people who do play but don't go that deep into it, have no idea of the levels of complexity involved in music.
Yeah.
You know, just unbelievable. He starts just rattling off these crazy terms like he's talking about physics and science and biology and you know, just all of this stuff that's happening and compositions and everything. And then we just hear it and it sounds beautiful and we have no idea why. We don't care. And that's the crazy thing with it. You know, I think music has the big difference between music and anything else about that and that creativity and complexity and technical theory and knowledge is all of that goes into the jiu-jitsu, but when a normal person is exposed to that over the head, you need to understand it to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Music, you don't need to understand it to appreciate it.
Yeah.
That is the power of music,
Yeah.
which is everyone appreciates it. You'll see like people be playing music. You see these videos of people, you know, stuck in an airport and they're playing music. Every single person tapping their feet, bumping their head. You know, all of the technical stuff that goes behind that makes that stuff possible. They don't have a clue. It really transcends the barrier between understanding why and being able to appreciate.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing, isn't it? For, well, 2 points. There's a documentary on, well, a little mini documentary on YouTube by Steve Vai, guitar player, played in Whitesnake.
Yep.
Talking about all the exact same things that you were talking about there with the jazz player, which is really interesting, which I'll try and find and send over to you, because that's definitely worth a watch. But like trying to get people interested in jiu-jitsu who've not done it before, and it's that meme, isn't it? You know, sat there waiting for your friend to come and try the free trial class, and you turn into a skeleton. Yeah. It's really difficult to get somebody to come in and do it, and no matter how good you know it is and how much you tell them, it's like, oh, how come?
Man, that is just the that is the quintessential problem of jiu-jitsu. That's the issue that we have, is the complexity of jiu-jitsu, and maybe it's not the complexity, maybe it's the lack of exposure, or how new it is, how modern it is, but probably very likely a combination of the two. You think maybe if everyone was exposed to grappling as much as they've been exposed to music, and had only been exposed to music as much as they've been exposed to grappling, perhaps they'll appreciate grappling without understanding, but not music. It's an interesting thought. I don't think that's the case. I think that music transcends that and reaches us on many different levels. But let's forget about that before we get too deep on that. But yeah, you're right. The question is that the issue that you have with jiu-jitsu as a spectator sport is it doesn't get watched by people who don't do it. Right? There's very few sports. Imagine if football only got watched by people who played regularly. It would be nothing. You know, people who play five-a-side is very, still a massive. A lot of people play. Oh yeah. But compared to the people who watch. Or boxing, another great example. There's that big, the combat sport, brothers or cousins between that striking, boxing and jiu-jitsu. It's very simple to watch and understand boxing, and very hard to watch and understand jiu-jitsu. And that's the problem that we have. It is complicated, and for that reason, how do you get jiu-jitsu to the next level? How do you? And that's one of the things that we have to thank MMA for. Yeah, I really do. Like, Brazilian jiu-jitsu and grappling as a sport has been able to piggyback off of the success, the ludicrous success of the UFC and mixed martial arts. As a grappler, you may or may not like MMA, but you must thank it for exposing small bits of our sport to a wider audience. Yeah. And that's why I do agree to do commentary on MMA shows, and why I'm such a fan of MMA and the UFC. The bigger the UFC gets, the bigger grappling will get. Like, you can do an armbar in a video game. Like, think about that for a second. It's not a jiu-jitsu video game, it's an MMA video game. You can do RNCs and omoplatas and arm bars, and there'll be people who have never trained in their life, but they know you hold down the left trigger and turn the stick a few times to the side, you're going to do an arm bar. Very good friend, one of my best mates, like my best friend who doesn't train jiu-jitsu, just never appealed to him, and but we play the UFC game with each other. Man, I've seen him throw a good RNC. What he's done, he knows the right trigger, right stick, go like that. We got into, he got into a little tussle in a club once, and he threw this RNC on it. Don't go with him. But that was pretty nice.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, like, as you say, the jiu-jitsu and grappling's got a lot for piggybacking off the back of the UFC. Yeah. And I think weightlifting uses the same analogy for CrossFit. Yep. Like, it's a massive one for them. It's increased the popularity of it. But I think the biggest difference, to go back to what you said earlier, the reason why it might not be as entertaining to watch as some other sports and really difficult to get into is because people's exposure is at a high level. Yeah. And two great guys cancel each other out, and it's difficult to watch sometimes, isn't it? If you're not in it. Yeah. And you'd be better off watching those like highlight reel rolls of gym training, flow rolling. Yeah,
I think, but then of course at the same time, if you can cherry pick all of your what people are exposed to, then and it's always good. You know, I genuinely believe, a good timing because we have it tonight. But I believe that team grappling events. I genuinely believe that team grappling could be one of the most important things that ever happens to jiu-jitsu. Yeah. I genuinely believe that. And it sounds ridiculous. I genuinely believe that. And the reason for that is, you're absolutely right. People cancel each other out. Jiu-jitsu needs to get, in order for jiu-jitsu needs to get bigger, more people need to watch it. The more people who watch it, the more people who do it. The more people who do it, the more people who watch it. The more people who watch it, the more money is involved. The more money is involved, the more companies come in, and everything blows up. Yeah. It's this cascading snowball effect. And to get more people to watch it, like you said, you get two top guys, and they cancel each other out. You know, very often, the main event on a big show, it's a very, very close match, and it's going to be a very boring match very often. The beauty of these team events is that you are guaranteed some mismatches. Mismatches are good. Yeah. Yep. Now, if you make a super fight show where they're individual matches and you mismatch them, you're a shitty matchmaker. Because what you're doing, you know, feeding the 70-kilo guy to the 100-kilo guy, but you create a team event where that will happen organically. Yeah. And you go, that's how team events work, baby. Yep. Sometimes you get a big weight difference. And then you have all of the other stuff, which is, you know, you have the mismatches, you have the added narrative of this continued storyline passing through. The person watching feels like they can be part of it, where they're going, oh man, that person's good, but he's really tired. He's had 2 matches already, and this guy's fresh. And I genuinely believe that team grappling, like Quintet, and I'm going to watch Polaris tonight. I'm really excited to watch it. I believe that it has the ability to reach out to an audience that we would be unable to attain with tournaments. Tournaments are better than super fights for that reason, but better than tournaments, and definitely better than super fights.
I think the added sort of narrative of like adding a location from each of the grapplers, so it's like Ireland and UK instead.
Yeah, versus Europe. Yeah.
So I think having even like a regional ones, like a Manchester versus London, or like Newcastle versus Middlesbrough, like different sort of regions for the grappling teams would probably bring in more crowds. Yep. And they're sort of like, I'm back in Manchester here, and it's sort of again gets the, I think Jake did it a while back with Empire, North versus South. Yep. And that seemed to gather quite a bit of attention as well.
You know, maybe we've got to take a page out of football book. Yeah. Maybe we need a league for these team events. You know, and you run them, because now look, we're getting to a point now where who's worrying about crowds? Yeah. You know, it's not the time. He coughs conveniently at the right time. It's not about crowds. I've been tested on right now, it's not about crowds. I'm spitballing here. Some crazy ideas. What if we have 10 regional teams? Yeah. London team, Southampton, you know, Bournemouth team, or the South Coast team, Manchester team, Newcastle team, the Glasgow team, and they compete every week. Yeah. You know, it's an interesting idea, isn't it?
Oh, definitely.
And like they just go on a Saturday, or maybe there's one every week. So not every team's competing every week, but you know, if you have that many teams, you could do once a month basically. Yeah. With that number of teams.
It's an interesting idea. And what's good about that, what you're saying, that ties in with this is
by the way, just right now, if anyone does this now, you talk to me first. Don't steal this idea, because we're time stamping this. We know what's the 25th, 26th of September.
Yes.
Time is a very abstract concept in 2020.
It's that continuous exposure, isn't it? So seeing the same people week in, week out, and I think that's what the UFC does really well, and boxing does really well when they're promoting a fight. And Polaris does it really well as well, actually, with the build-ups and the prelims. It's showing you the characters of the people that are in there and building the narrative, and you're buying into the people that are in the fight, so you know them. And it's the difference, like with when you watch a judo tournament or anything like that in the Olympics, like you don't really know anything about anybody that's competing, but you watch it because it's entertaining. But if you know that backstory and you've watched 5 UFC embeddeds on somebody that you maybe didn't know that much about to begin with, and now you're invested in them, it's way more entertaining. And some companies are doing that well, like Polaris does that well with the backstories. So, but tying in with your idea of like continuous exposure on a weekly basis, people build the relationships with the athletes.
My head's spinning right now. Whole journey home, I'm going to be thinking about this. Am I willing to sacrifice every one of my weekends to travel around the country and run these little? Because they wouldn't take long. They'd be like a
simple camera system.
They could probably take an hour.
Yeah.
Probably take an hour, you know, and you know, every Sunday afternoon you get an hour of team grappling.
So like merchandise with the rash guards, names in the back.
Very interesting.
Watch this space.
That's it.
Now, I have loads of ideas for cool grappling shows, but this is a new one. I literally just thought of that as I was talking, and now I've said it. I'm thinking about it now. It's a lot of work, but I think, you know, at the moment when like there's no crowds, you don't have a crowd, so it takes away. It doesn't matter where you're running it.
No.
But yeah, you could, and actually, I'm like trying to sell an idea that doesn't. It's interesting, right? You have like I'm saying to myself. You could have like teams of maybe 6 people with 2 or 3 subs. You can change the team. So you might do a home and away over the season, and they might have won the first one, but you can mix in a couple of guys, change the order, and I think it does make it interesting.
Separate leagues, and you've got the risk of relegation and promotion, and
and then you just got to ask the question, well, like, how do you monetize it? No jiu-jitsu. No jiu-jitsu money, no money in jiu-jitsu. But yeah, anyway, before I continue to talk about the Raspberry Ape UK Jiu-Jitsu League.
There you go, it's named. It's named. Yeah.
I almost ran I tried to run a sub-only tournament many years ago, and got close. It was going to be eight women, because for some reason the women black belts that we have in the country seem to be the black belts we have in general seem to be much younger. The women, you see them be much younger than the guys. There's actually not that many adults that are under 30, which I'm soon not going to be either. Under 30 black belts, but there are a lot more with the women, or there were at the time anyway, and they're similar weights. The guys are all over the place with their weight. So I thought, if you want to run a decent, like a good 8-man tournament, like 8-woman tournament. I did that, planned that many years ago. Got sponsored and everything. We were just looking for a venue, and it never happened. But yeah, I keep on thinking about it.
I think that'd be great for like women's jiu-jitsu as well. We had Violet Bennett on the podcast a couple of episodes back, and we were discussing like the lack of exposure and opportunity for women in jiu-jitsu. And
God damn! Now I need to make a women's, a few women's teams in the league now.
Well, that could be a great way of doing it, because there's a lot of talent there, and you know, more exposure for everybody, the better.
Not definitely.
Yeah, ideas to think about.
Well, going back to something that we talked about before, and I can't not talk about this today.
Yeah.
You talked about the beauty of how you enjoy problem solving. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you at the time, but I didn't. But is that why you enjoy lifting the stones? Because it's not a barbell that has a fixed grip. It's a bit of a puzzle solving.
Do you know what? Yes. It's not as lifting a stone is a puzzle when you compare it to lifting a barbell. Yeah. But it's not a puzzle when you compare it to playing chess or doing jiu-jitsu or something like that, you know, or doing a lot of things. So there's that little aspect, and maybe that's just like one of the many reasons why I'm a bit drawn to that. But you're right, it is a puzzle. It's a puzzle that it's a puzzle with not that many variables. So.
I suppose it's like the first time you approach the stone and you've ever touched it, that's where the initial fun in the puzzle is. Yeah. Like you're rolling with somebody new at an open mat for the first time. Yeah. But then you kind of get an idea of what it's all about, and this and that.
It is, and yeah, you are right. There is that puzzle and that problem solving. and then you get the weather coming in as well.
Yeah.
I remember I did one. I'll give you an example of some problem solving actually with the stone lift. When I did Stones and Strangles in the last time I did the piano stone, the heaviest stone that I was doing, and it was wet that day, very wet, and I took the stone off the plinth and it slid down the grassy little verge, and it was caked, it was caked in mud, and the water is okay, it's not great on a stone. It makes it a bit slippery, but mud makes it slicker than anything else. There's probably some sheep shit and stuff in there as well.
Yeah.
But it was honestly, the weight of the stone wasn't too bad. The grip wasn't awful, but it was just slick. And I tried drying it, but because it was sitting on the muddy grass again, I couldn't, like looking for a flat area or like a little grassy mound that I could put it on top of so it wouldn't be kind of squishing back into the mud.
Yeah.
I couldn't find it anywhere. So I got like a twig on the ground and just put that underneath to keep half an inch of the stone off of the ground, so I could dry it, put a bit of chalk on it, and the ground wouldn't take it off and I could pick it up. So yeah, it is.
Which was tougher, that one or the saddling there one? That saddling there one. Like
that's another. To be fair, that's another. The saddling is way lighter though, 101 kilos. But the saddling there is fun because that is the biggest problem solving one, because it's not about lifting it up, it's about getting it on top of this thing. Yeah. That was soaking wet, that was super muddy. James got a little bit of it, but the whole process of, so I got there, like pulled it out, it's soaking wet, and then just bog, just thick water, not even just mud, water at that position, just in, where you have to stand to put the stone on top. I thought, I'm not going to be able to, I'm going to be sliding all over the place, especially trying to push, I'm going to be slipping all over. So I thought I'd make a platform out of wood. There was a tree that had just been felled, a massive tree had been felled a few meters away. And I just went over and I kicked a branch off, and because it was it was dead, they were quite brittle. So I was like, they were thick piece of wood. I was looking awesome. It was raining at the time, so James was having to, he wasn't filming much because he was trying to keep his camera dry. But like that scene where Captain America like rips that tree trunk over, bro, it was like that. I was like breaking these big pieces, and I was just like snapping them in half like that and laying them down. And I was doing it for ages because I like built this quite big platform there with maybe like 15 little, or kind of 1 to 2 inch thick pieces of wood. And I was snapping these things on my leg and kicking them off the tree. And then afterwards, when we got back in the car, I was like, James, you get all of that? That's going to look awesome. And he's like, oh man, I didn't get a lot of it, to be honest with you.
Are you wearing the lumberjack?
Of course.
Of course. Imagine anybody driving past just seeing the guy in the woods, like just ripping trees apart.
And yeah, I laid the wood down, and then I had the it gave me a little bit of a platform to work that stone up. But the saddling there was hot. It was so cold as well. Like there was a lot of ice on the ground there, because we were there in March, in just the beginning of March, and it was still pretty cold, especially in the Highlands. So I remember trying to it was wet, cold, and I remember trying to push this stone up, and my hands were just freezing cold. Like kind of lose the mobility and strength out of them. I was like that, trying to get it up. But saddling there was cool, but Fiona was definitely the hardest one with the combination of mud and sheep shit.
My favorite, sheep's probably my favorite bit of the whole documentary, which was great, was your interaction with that lost lamb.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That was so funny, man. We missed, James thankfully cut out a little bit, which was funny, but not embarrassing, but not impressive either. Which was, I drove past and I heard like this really high pitched bleating. And I look over and there's this little baby, that tiny, it was March, so kind of very newborn. And it was just there screaming by itself. This tiny little thing, probably, you could fit you could pick it up with one hand quite easily. And we went over because I thought that Fiona we're looking for the stone at this point. So I jumped over, I thought it might be in that field. And there's little things here, so I went to say hello to it. And then I saw the rest of the sheep over there, so I was like, come on, let's head off. And it followed me. I tried to pick it up, it didn't want to get picked up, but it followed me, and then it got close enough to the mum, and it ran up to the mum again. But then whilst we're in this field with all these baby sheep, we see one of the sheep just starts just running, just like kind of circling around and like charging pretty fast. Like, oh shit, it thinks we're fucking with the kids. James, get behind the tree now. If it charges at us, dive behind the tree so it bashes into the tree instead of us. But I think for obvious reasons, the camera was down because we were running away from this ram that was charging around the field. But we realised it wasn't in that field; it was in the one opposite. Yeah, it was cool. Man.
Oh, it was cool. I had a similar experience once. We were walking around the reservoir, and you know, like the spillways that lead the water in off the hills into the main body of the reservoir. There's the same sort of thing here. The sheep bleating away, and the lamb had fallen down into the spillway, and the mum and another lamb were up on the top. So I thought, you know, I've got to do a bit of the hero moment here, jump down, and this lamb's giving me the runaround for about 25 minutes. Can I get hold of it? Can I fuck? It's going everywhere. It's slippy. It's covered in moss. I'm like trying to grab it. Probably about the same size as a small dog.
Straight out of Rocky, right?
Straight out of Rocky. Turn around and there's probably a crowd of 25 people on the bridge. I'm like, oh, I can't get this thing now. There's no way that I can like jump down there and not come out with it. Managed to rugby tackle it and like a med ball or a sandbag, throw it up on this wall. And the mum just like all the time is trying to jump on my head.
Yeah.
No thanks. Just pissed off.
Yeah,
at least I got a round of applause at the end here, but I was covered in shit. But yeah, that was a funny little bit of a documentary. That.
Yeah.
Were there more stones that you wanted to do when you were up there, or
there was only one stone that we couldn't do. We originally in the first draft we had this sort of storyline in it, but we took it out, which was we wanted to go and do the Putrek stone afterwards, which is a stone that I did about a month ago. I went back up to Scotland and I just did it. It was the easiest stone of the trip, which is why I wasn't too bummed about not doing it. It's a 95 kilo stone. You just put it on the plinth. We plan to do that. There's a route from where the Fiona's like just above the Carricorns. No, not Carricorns. Sorry, above the Trossachs and Loch Lomond, and it's sort of in the northeast there. And then there's a road that goes back through and you can go round or you go down to where it is. Anyway, we had this route planned out, and then we're going back down to Glasgow and heading off from there. And we'd lost signal about an hour before we got to the Fianna Stone. It's in the middle of nowhere, really in the middle of nowhere. We lost signal about an hour beforehand, and but it was fine because it was just a straight road. So we just cracked on, and we got to the bit. We had the pin still. We just couldn't search for anything else. So we found the Fianna, and we're like, let's just crack on and go and drive through until we get signal again. So driving through, and there's like a couple of truckers there. We asked them, we're looking to get to whatever the name of the place was. We're looking to get to this place. We're like, there's a road there, but you can't go there. Like, people don't go there. It's not gritted over the winter. It's bad. I'm like, I'll just drive slowly. I'll probably be all right. Like, is that a 4-wheel drive? No, it's like, look, I'll drive 2 miles an hour. It'll take us a little bit longer, but it will be fine. And then we go past, we go through, and then there's like a big sign which is "Do not pass in winter." Fuck it, we got to say it. So we start driving up, and like the snow's quite thin, and this is remote, proper remote. So the road is not a particularly well-made road, a very thin road, and there's like a drop-off on one side, not a big drop-off, but like a little drop-off, and then it was beautiful. There was like a huge, on the left-hand side, there's this little hill going up, and then this incredible, just like dark, eerie, medieval fantasy world forest, and then this little drop off on the other side, and then this big open field, and then this huge mountain range. And in Scotland, you drive through Scotland in winter, the mountain ranges are covered in snow. They're gorgeous. So the scenery wise, it was unbelievable. And we're driving through, and the snow's like a couple of millimeters thick. We keep driving, we're going slowly, and the snow's starting to get thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. Me and James stopped talking to each other. We're just like, I'm focusing, I'm going real slow. Like, and I go, like, I'm just going to go slowly, James. James, like, yeah, go slowly. And then the snow starts to get thicker and thicker. And I'm thinking, normally, you slip off the road, you fall down, the car goes down a little ditch, you can't get it out, you call someone in, they'll come sort it. We've got no signal. We're miles away from anyone. There's no houses there. There's no cars coming on that road. Nobody goes on that road in winter because nobody's dumb. Thinking if we break down or if we slip off, we will die, or I will eat James because I'll need the energy to walk back 2 miles. I said to James, James, I don't fancy your chances, mate. If we break down, it's going down, and I do not fancy your chances. So we got up, and there was one point, I'm like, James, I think I want to turn around. He's like, I think I want you to turn around. But it was so tight. I did a 3-point turn on this tiny road to the point where I got James to get out and have his hands on the hood of the car so it wouldn't slip off of the edge of this cliff here. And we reversed and we drove back. But there's a scene where and then the most amazing thing happened. The whole trip is crazy experience this whole trip, which is we're driving back. We're driving super slow still. It's really beautiful here. And still snow, icy on the road. We're driving and out of this forest, this really dark forest. There's like on a hill, there's this little opening, and this huge stag walks out. And we caught a little bit. It's in the documentary. We catch us a little bit, but we missed the first part. We weren't ready for it. It walks out like the most majestic thing I've ever seen in my life. The stag walks out high up on this hill. Looks out, looks at us. We drive up, like slowing down, we're staring at it, watches us, we get next to it, looks at us for a second, just turns around and walks back into this forest and disappeared. We were like looking at each other like, did this just happen? This is unbelievable. And a little bit of that made it into the documentary, and then we drove back and just drove through another route down to Glasgow. So a long story, but we didn't do all the stones, pretty much all of the stones that I wanted to do. Just it was a very, very short trip, a crazy trip actually, because I did 5. It was 5 days, and I did 5 seminars in those 5 days as well. So we drive to a new place. We did 1,500 miles around Scotland. I did in those 5 days. So hours of driving, stop, do a stone, drive, do a stone, seminar. Just every single night, it was just wild. Very early mornings, very late ends, but a really fantastic trip.
It sounds good.
You can tell it's packed when you're watching it.
Oh, it's packed.
Yeah.
Man, 8 episodes. That was 4 days.
Yeah.
It was like you're thinking it was like 2 weeks. It was 4, even watching it, I'm like this 3 episodes is 1 day.
What percentage of you when that stag came over the hill wished that you had your bow with you?
You know what? Yeah, probably. It was just it's quite. I think the whole journey for me was a bit of a spiritual pilgrimage, a spiritual journey, and there's something very, obviously very majestic about stag, and Scotland in general I find a very spiritual place, and the wilderness in general. You get out into the proper wild, a place like that, which people don't go through in winter. It's really left untouched, and there were deer everywhere, and sheep. They were free roaming, walking across the road. And you can definitely feel a primal energy there. And when that deer walked out, it just looked like it was king of that area, and it kind of walked out as to say, nah, not today. Yeah, you head off back. We welcome you here, and we're saying goodbye now, and then walk back into the forest. It was special.
Awesome.
Yeah, really cool.
Almost missing like an epic soundtrack behind it there then.
Yeah, man, I was like playing just like big.
Sounds like something out of Lord of the Rings.
Epic, like basically Lord of the Rings music this whole trip as well. But man, what a beautiful country. That was honestly one of the. I've done a fair bit of traveling, but those 5 days in Scotland, as packed as they were one of the greatest trips in my life by far, because of what we were doing, where we were going, and everything.
Everyone seems so welcoming. Like how much Martin Janssens? He seemed like a really big help as well. I enjoyed that podcast.
Yeah.
But everybody that you went, everyone that was there for each individual stone just looked like super welcoming. I find that quite a bit about Scotland. It's a nice place to visit.
Very good people there. I'm very lucky to. I feel very privileged to be welcomed with open arms almost every time I go anywhere. But even down to the landlady of the hotel that we stayed in, who knew the stones and gave us the directions and showed us on the map where to get to one of the stones on the first day, to June Richards, who the keeper of the Inverstone, who sadly passed just a couple of months after that we were there. But that was the second time I visited her, and she remembered me, and we spoke. And to Martin, who I just messaged, and I said, I'm going to be up. Can we train? Can we do a podcast? We're going to lift the Ravenstone, who was fantastic, and I still keep in contact with him, talk to very often about stone lifting. He's a really great guy. The stone lifting community in general, I talk about this quite a lot, but jiu-jitsu is a niche community, which is why you tend to find the smaller the community, the more close-knit it is naturally. A great example, football fans tend not to get on very well with each other. It's the biggest sport in the world, but if you were to find, drone racing fans, people who do drone racing, it's a very small sport. If you not bump into someone at the airport who's rocking their whatever drone racing, I was talking about drone racing the other day, so it's in my head. It's a crazy. Have you seen that stuff? No. Have you seen drone racing?
It's rapid, isn't it?
Insane. So you haven't seen? Honestly, these little drones, and they wear the VR goggles, and they're like, so they can see and they're unbelievably next to the Star Wars,
like LED rings that they go through.
Unbelievable. Oh, wow. But imagine if you're into the very tiny world of drone racing, and you see someone at the airport in a drone racing t-shirt, you're going to go and say hello. In the same way that if I'm walking through an airport and I see someone with a Gracie Barra t-shirt, I will go say hello to them. So it's a very close-knit community and a very niche sport. And if you think jiu-jitsu is niche, damn it, stone lifting is even smaller. Stone lifting will make jiu-jitsu look like football, really. It's very tiny. So the smaller the sport, the more welcome you are by those who are involved in the sport. And a lot of the people involved in the sport are, people who have been involved for a very long time, and it's not really. It's a sport that needs work to continue the legacy there, and that's what I felt was, I felt almost a duty to do, and I was trying to do with the documentary Stones and Strangles, and a lot of what I do, talking about it on my because I have a relatively, compared to stone lifters, I have a relatively big platform to try and talk about it and try and kind of keep that legacy and inspire other people to go and travel and understand the history and respect these stones.
I can imagine definitely that series prompted a lot of people to sort of whether to try stone lifting, but at least visit the areas where they're in anyway.
I've had lots of messages and continue to about people who want to go and because I do a lot at the moment. A lot of people, when I do podcasts, people talk about stone lifting and then it's exposed to more people, and it's one of those knock-on effects, those domino effects. So as long as people respect the stones and be careful. That's the most important thing, really. Treat the stone not like a stone. You treat a stone very rough. This isn't a stone. This is a piece of history. It's an antique. Just because it's a stone doesn't mean it's just a stone. Treat it with respect. Don't drop it. Put it down gently, and keep it clean. No tacky. That's like the main thing. That's like the biggest faux pas you could possibly do with a historical stone is use tacky. But apart from that, continue to keep the legacy alive of the stone and the history of the stone and be part of it.
Was it a more rewarding personal journey for you doing the natural stones or doing the Dennis?
It's a great question, man. It's a great question. I think I would say the Dennis was bigger. The Dennis are difficult. It was a goal that I had that is a bigger goal. Doing the Husserl will be bigger than doing the Dennis. Doing the Dennis is bigger than doing any of the mounted stones that I've done, because the mounted stones that I've done are easier than the Dennis. For me, and the Dennis was really a journey to kind of rehabilitate, getting that final steps of rehabilitating my back as well. And there's a lot more pageantry involved. There's people there. You book it in. There's a certificate. They unlock the stones and drag them out for you. So for me, the biggest achievement was lifting the Dennis. But doing the Husserl, I think will be, if I manage to carry it round, especially.
Is it 180 or is it 200?
No, it's 186.
It's a big piece, isn't it?
It's a big stone, but the hard part is that it's 186, but you've got to walk it 50 meters.
Oh wow!
For proper full stroke around the pen. That's right. Yeah. So
yeah, there's a lot of great Rogue and other documentaries on YouTube. Yeah, Strongman's a great one for the Diddies.
No, so Strongman's Stoneman for the Diddies, and then full Sturka for the Icelandic ones.
What's his name?
The Ventadores for the
yes, yeah, there's that one as well, isn't there? Thor's training partner, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Stefan Peterson.
Yes,
yeah, he's the guy who does one of the documentaries, isn't he?
Yeah.
Which is a really good one to go and watch. 180 kilos on a stone is tough.
Yeah, it's tough, man. So the step up from, and it's not even the heaviest stone there. The step up from the Scottish stones to the Icelandic stones is a big step up. There's quite a few really cool ones though, but like I say, that's kind of the next goal now, and. Between using my Husserfeld replica and continue to work my strength to pick off the ground and work in the sandbags and start walking with the sandbags now, that's the next big goal.
The Diddies for you, how long a journey from deciding to start pursuing that?
I'd say around about a year.
Lift. Yeah,
around about a year, maybe a little bit longer. But the thing is it's always secondary. Yeah, always secondary. I'm a grappler. I just have a hobby of stone lifting, and the training involved does help my grappling, or my grappling performance anyway, my strength conditioning for that. So there'll be a tournament that will come up, or something else that either come up, and I have to do other things. So it's not a year of focus training. So when I talk about the Husserfeld, people go, when are you going to do the Husserfeld? I go, it could be in 6 months, it could be in 6 years.
Yeah.
Honestly, it could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, if I trained, it's like background training. It's training in the background. It's not a direct focus when I get into the gym every day. It's an afterthought, but still a thought. And I kind of increase that everything that I need to do. Yeah. But who knows? Who knows if I could be feeling real strong in a couple of months, or I could do ADCC trials and qualify, and I'm going to focus all of 2021 on ADCC, and then it could be in 3 years' time.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a great job with the sandbags, all the videos that you're putting up on the social media. Is great. You've just started a great partnership with Cerberus as well, which you've got a beautiful range of equipment for training. And that whole community is great as well, isn't it?
Yeah, the strongman community is awesome. They are really cool, and Cerberus are great. I was using certain, I get offered sponsorship deals very, very regularly, and I turn them almost all down. I've got like a real, it's not good for money, but I've got a real issue with having any indication that I'm selling out at all. Like I don't do promotions or anything like that. But Cerberus messaged me. I've been using Cerberus bags for years. Yeah, I have Cerberus, half my Cerberus collection I had before I was connected to them. So it was like, man, it would be like if American Eagle messaged me and wanted to sponsor me to the jeans. So I'll talk about that all day because that is me prior to that. Yeah. So yeah, when they spoke to me and I was like, man, that's awesome. I got more bags. They just made the best kit, and the sandbag collection's increased, and other people are getting into sandbag lifting, and seeing the benefits of sandbag lifting. And heavy sandbag lifting. Traditionally, sandbag lifting was more of a conditioning tool. You'd have a sandbag which was 40, 50, 60 kilos, and you do loads of it. You do like complexes and stuff with it, but really focusing on big, heavy sandbags, doing squats and holds and carries and shouldering and pickups and stuff like that. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's great. And there's not a lot of good instructionals out there as well on the heavy sandbag stuff. There's a lot of stuff that people can find that's for the lighter stuff, for the conditioning. So you seeing your stuff and people seeing your stuff online is probably one of the main sources of information for people doing that, and that's great. And maybe that's something that you could put more out on, because I know people will be interested on that.
Yeah, well, I'm just in the process now. It should be done. I'm hoping it will be done in the next couple of weeks. But I filmed after many years of people asking all the time, I filmed a grip training instructional about a month ago, maybe just over a month ago. It's being edited as we speak, and kind of just to answer the question of how do I get into it? That's not how do I get into it. So I filmed this. It could be an hour, about an hour and 15. just going through the different types of grip, how to train it, whether you have the great tools or whether you have absolutely nothing and you've got to make, do it with sticks and pieces of wood or whatever, bricks or whatever, and different ways to train it and how that applies to grappling. So that's gonna come out in the next month, hopefully. I'm gonna release that and kind of just get, and like I said, as part of what I feel like my duty is, or one of my goals is to get more people into the strength side of grappling. And if it goes well, I'm considering doing there's not as much that you can do when it comes to the grip stuff. The grip stuff's so massive. But thinking about doing a sandbag one as well. So I might do a sort of sandbag training for grapplers, instructional, and maybe some of the odd object stuff or some of the unconventional training that I do as well. So, originally I was just planning to wait until I had my own gym and my own facility in order to start doing this. And I thought, what, screw it. Now's a good time than ever. And I had lots of time over lockdown to kind of plan it and think about it. So yeah, stay tuned.
Well, so a good question for me from that then, just maybe it's a bit of a round-off question, is, you talked about your legacy that you want to kind of pass on for strength sports and jiu-jitsu, and we talked a lot about philosophy. Where do you see, where are your priorities now? Where do you see that they're going to be over the next 5 to 10 years? What is that legacy that you want to leave?
Yeah, so at the moment it's a very difficult time at the moment for me now. I left teaching. I was teaching for 12 years at Mill Hill, and I left teaching in October. And the goal was to focus on myself. I'm not getting any younger. I'm 30 at the end of this year. I've got maybe 5 years, if I'm lucky, of sort of prime physical condition before you really start to deteriorate in sort of the mid to late 30s. Not quickly, but past the prime. Especially when you've been training since you were young.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've looked after my body a lot more in the last 5 years than I did in the 5 years previous to that. So I'm in better condition physically now than I was at 24. Yeah. But still, time is still a very true factor. The plan when I left Mill Hill in October was to focus on myself, to travel, to train, to do seminar tours that I could do more in a smaller amount of time, to get enough money to not worry about any working and focus. My plan was to, after I did the Northern tour that I did in February and March, the plan was to go to Atos for 2 months and live full-time athlete, train with the best, and really focus on competition. And then this really annoying thing called coronavirus, I think it's called.
Yeah, that's familiar.
If you remember that thing came out, and then obviously from there, that kind of killed all of the plans. I think there's an awkward position now where there isn't that much grappling going on. My priority is still ADCC trials was meant to be next weekend. They moved that to December now. I think there's a really good chance it's going to get moved backwards again. I think I think everywhere's going to struggle. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, unfortunately, as we go over winter, and respiratory illnesses just generally kind of explode a little bit over winter. So I think the ADCC trials will get moved again. That is the priority for me, is to qualify for ADCC 2021 and then train really hard for ADCC for that. But talking about 5 to 10 years, Jesus Christ, 10 years put me at 4 years old. Never thought I'd get to that age, even thinking about it. The goal for me is very simple. It's always been very simple. I want to have a gym. Over the last couple of years, my vision of a gym has really changed with the amount of strength conditioning stuff and sort of that importance that it is to me. I want a gym with the mats and with the physical training stuff. I want my garage I want to be able to expand my garage, and so I can get more stuff basically. Expand my garage and build a really, really good strength conditioning facility within a jiu-jitsu academy, and kind of have where the physical combat meets the physical culture, and have those two things back entwining in the same gym. So for me, I left teaching after many years, and whilst it's nice to not have to worry about other people, and it's redundant at this point because the gym, I couldn't be doing it anyway right now, so I kind of left at a good time, to be honest. But I love teaching, man. I love teaching, and I love being with a team. That's when I feel happy. When the last 4 years, when I ran the Raspberry Ape grappling program at Mill Hill, man, the classes were packed with like 30, 40, 50 people in the classes every night. and I just go home smiling, like being grateful for my life every single day. Honestly, like some people are more introvert. Some people lose energy having to be with people, and some people gain energy having to be with people.
Yeah.
And I'm an extrovert, and I just be invigorated by being able to hang out with my friends, not my students, but I see them as both the same thing, and to get energy off of them, and to watch them do well, and to watch them smash competition. So for me, that's what makes me happy is training people and building that, and I want to be able to do that in my own facility with a strength and conditioning aspect to it as well. So that's the main goal for me, and then to continue to have, I think, to use that as a base to kind of get back on doing my own podcast, and to help putting out online content to sort of spread both jiu-jitsu and the type of strength work that I do, and then how those two things interconnect with each other as well. So yeah, the goal is relatively simple and focused. Yeah.
I wish you all the success for that. You're doing a
Thank
great
you
job
very
with it
much,
at the
brother. I
moment.
appreciate
So,
it.
might want to continue.
Oh, definitely. And for those very few that don't quite have you on the social medias, where can everybody find you?
They're thinking this guy's crazy. I'm good at this because I do this at the end of my podcast. You can find me, as always. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at raspberry_ape. You can find my website, which is raspberryape.com. You can email me at dan@raspberryape.com, or if you're interested in my podcast@raspberryape.com. You can listen to my podcast, which is on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, all of the good ones. And what else? Or you can find my YouTube channel, which is at youtube.com/raspberryape.
So that's